Mr. Principal Counsel Xavier-Jean Keïta, thank you very much for the honor of joining us in the conference here today and for your keynote speech. We would like to ask you a few questions to see your thoughts about some topics that we're interested in. First of all, do you think the implementing proper law enforcement should be the first step for failing states to succeed in promoting and adopting basic human rights? Or those countries' abuse of this power in the name of the protection of these human rights?
First of all, thank you. It's an honor for me to be invited by ICD and Justice Sebutinde. I think that all states have their sovereignty, and the world now is global, and you cannot pretend having impunity even as a state if you are mistreating your population. And we have universal rights, human rights, belonging to a universal legacy. So you do not have a human right of Mali, human right of Senegal, or human right of Egypt. Mm-hmm. We have reached a level with the UN DHR, for instance, with the European Convention. Even the European Convention, those who are not part of it, United States, for instance, they all recognize those high principles like a customary law. So it's a part of the legacy of all the humanity, and a Malian may say that it's his part of his personal legacy. So if you cannot force a state, you can denounce a state, and states, if they are elected or chosen, they are there to protect their citizens. So if they do not respect the law, an external body cannot force them. Who is in charge of the security of the world? It's the UN Security Council, not the United States, not the Russian, not the Chinese, not the French. It's the UN under the Chapter 7. So there are some mechanisms to denounce some dictature. And the system of ICC, for instance, if you are not state party, there is a possibility that the UN Security Council refer the situation of your country. And there is a possibility of the prosecutor to take an initiative proprio motu to investigate if you are a state party, or if something happened in a territory of a state party or with a citizen of a state party. Mm-hmm. So mechanisms are organized to fill a certain gap. Thinking about forcing a state to do something, they have their sovereignty, and a good, a well-organized society needs to have a population educated, civil society present, NGOs involved, and the welfare of a state is not only the responsibility of the head of state. We have to feel, all citizens, we have to feel that we have a responsibility for our own welfare. And this is why now with the internet, you see some revolution starting like in Burkina, and they say, no, stop. After years of dictature, they decide, stop, we want a change. So you have a global culture now of democracy, of human rights, and you cannot, like 30 years ago, decide to close your country. It's difficult with internet, yeah, to decide that things occurring in another country, your citizen will not be informed. The world have changed. The world now is global. You cannot force a state, but you can put a state under pressure of respecting citizens and respecting what belongs now to our global legacy, human rights, for instance, global culture, respecting individual tradition, but those principles are applicable everywhere. No boundary, no specificity. We have a global heritage we are sharing.
Thank you. Focusing now a bit more in human rights, like the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights was the first step somehow of implementing the human rights, like in an international level, in a global level. In what way, if there is any, has this affected the current state legislature? Do you think there is more that could be done?
No, I think everything has been done already. If you go back, you look the French Revolution. The French Revolution have an influence on the democracy of United States. If you look the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, my topic was, it was a father or a grandfather of the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute is a descendant directly, and I have given example, Article 9, Article 10, Article 11, and you have the right to a fair trial, a right to have a provisional release or a release if you are illegally detained, the right to a fair trial, and you have these rights in the Convention of 1966. You have the same in the African Charter of Human Rights and People Rights. And finally, you have the Rome Statute. Even the Convention, the European Convention, Fair Trial, Article 6, you have the same provision in the Rome Statute. The principle, for instance, is presumption of innocence. You do not have to prove that you are innocent. It's for those who are attacking you, for those who are trying you, to prove that you are maybe guilty. And if you are tried, you have some high principle. Article 55 of the Rome Statute, Article 67. If you are poor, you are entitled to receive money for your legal assistance. If you talk to judges, you are entitled to have a counsel for free. You have the right to be tried in a language you fully understand. You have the right to silence. You can decide not to talk, and your silence cannot be taken against you. So all these rights are coming from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we cannot reinvent the wheel. We cannot pretend that we need additional convention. Everything has been signed and ratified. Now, what we need is to implement what we have signed.
Yeah.
It's time to implement. I was intervening 30 years ago in Paris in a trial defending a woman who was practicing female circumcision. And the thing was, all countries in which we still practice female circumcision, all these countries are signed and ratified the convention. the International Convention saying that this is a crime against the humanity and this is unacceptable. But you need in each country to take into consideration the tradition and to educate your population saying this tradition have nothing to do with the religion. This tradition, it's an old one and you have to stop it. This tradition is unacceptable nowadays. So this is a responsibility of the states themselves. When they let their population immigrate in Europe and they do not have the opportunity to mix with the local population, so they live inside Europe like in Africa without mixing their culture. And I think that the future will be to mix all the culture. Doesn't mean that you will abandon your tradition, but in a way, if you have your eyes open to other tradition, you may realize that some tradition you have are totally old-fashioned and unacceptable. And we need to have this common culture about human rights. And this will be the first step, having a common culture and a common heritage to protect. I don't think nowadays it's necessary to create or to sign new international convention. Everything has been quite done. I prefer that we implement the existing convention, that we try to invent something else. But we have to adapt ourselves with the evolution. Maybe we will have a cyber criminality, and this have to be taken into consideration. If you have terrorism, and they are maybe faster than the law, and these need our particular attention because the common legacy can be killed by the evolution. You can say, oh, liberty to talk or to do what you want, to say what you want. But you have to look the basic rights. My liberty can stop when I reach your independence and your liberty, respecting each other. If you look the religion, the monotheist religion, they all have the same high principle. Can we kill today on the name of Allah or on the name of Jesus? No. If you look, what they were teaching, this religion, you have always the same, respecting each other, loving each other, and these high principles are in our international convention, and they have to be implemented locally. Normally, if you sign a convention, if you ratify it, you have an obligation to implement it in your domestic system. And this is the system adopted by the Rome Statute. If you sign and ratify, you still have another step to implement your domestic law and to put it in conformity with the Rome Statute. And this will be an important step to universalize the law all over the world, not denying tradition, but having a common heritage.
Yeah, I think you raised a really interesting point about implementation, and we're obviously here from the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy. So I was just wondering, do you think we could use cultural diplomacy as a tool to help implement that universal adaptation to human rights?
Yes, I think that we have seen the limit of politics. We have seen the limit of diplomacy. We have seen the risk of thinking that your tradition is better than the other's tradition. So I think that mixing culture and diplomacy, it can be a solution. For instance, you can take the Israeli, you can take the Palestinian. Instead of saying you are wrong or you are right, you can look what they have in common. If they have something even minimum in common, you can start by this, saying, oh, maybe you have a different religion, but your ancestors, they have the same. You have the same tradition of hospitality. You have the same tradition of respect. Your problem of territory, maybe that is not essential. So if people agreed to have some common tradition, some common culture, and it's surrounded by a diplomacy, like a mediation, that is important. And you help people finding themselves the solution. It will be more solid than a decision or a political or army. If you accept a solution, even if it's not the best, it can be your solution. So this is the future I can see in this cultural diplomacy. We have failed for years to find peace between some population, and not only in Middle East. So maybe this can be the future. Let's talk. And I'm mediator, and in mediation we say that you do not have two persons fighting. You just have two people who haven't found yet the way to talk to each other and to communicate. If you succeed to create this link through the culture, through the tradition, so diplomacy is just after a channel, a way to put them together.
Yeah. So would you think that maybe perhaps there's a link between cultural diplomacy and the work of the International Criminal Court? Are the two connected in some way?
It's difficult to see a direct link, because international criminal tribunals or courts, they are based on law. This law take into consideration human rights and tradition, and respecting the other culture. You cannot say per se that the Rome Statute will be the one acting, respecting culture or tradition, but the common heritage is based on respect. And what is interesting now is to stop having the law of the winners. If you look Tokyo, Nuremberg, it was not satisfactory. Just imagine Hitler winning the Second War. Hitler will judge Charles de Gaulle, Churchill, Roosevelt as a war criminal. So the new system is respectful of the high principle, the Roman one, pas de crime, pas de peine sans loi. Nullum crimen, nulla pene, sine lege. That means you have first to give the definition of what is possible, what is permitted, and green light, yellow, and red. And this is fair, and this have been realized by the Rome Statute. You don't wait for a genocide to adopt a UN resolution to solve the problem. You are proactively anticipating and deciding this is a law, you cannot violate it. If you violate it, you will be accountable and responsible. This is why, when the Rome Statute have been adopted and the ICC put in place, whatever happened before the 1st July 2002 is not part of ICC, but after, it's our concern. War crime, crime against humanity, genocide, and soon crime of aggression. So this will be the future, to anticipate, to put in place a kind of legal dissuasion, and to have the same culture of what is possible, what is impossible.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's been some really brilliant and insightful answers. I think I've even learned a lot. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time.
Thanks.